So they say that for any sound to be in existence, there has to be three things happening at once. There must be time, there must be volume, and there must be frequency. And without any of these three things, a sound cannot exist. Now this module, the wave packets by Auza, deals with all of those three things in one and allows you to access and manipulate them all together in this wonderful, well, it's an oscillator, it's a function generator, it's an LFO, and it's all of those things all at once. And I've had this module for a while and I've just had so much fun with it. I just haven't got around to shooting a video with it. So here I am. I'll try and explain this. Hang tight. There's a lot to get into here in what this does. So this has been on so many of my productions over the past few years, and I've used it in so many different ways. I'm going to take you through some of the main functions, and if you've got any questions, obviously leave that in the comments below. Do like and subscribe as well if you're new to this channel. It's most appreciated, helps the channel grow. So I've actually got, there's actually 5 outputs on this module, and I've got the first 4 going into the MATTHS here, so you'll be able to see what's going on with those. The 5th output is just an audio output, or just an LFO output without any modulation going on of the volume or anything like that. And I'll explain more of that as we get into it. In fact, we can hear it. Let me just turn that volume up. And so we are listening to, forget about all these controls at the moment, we are just listening to the volume, the audio output of this, and you can switch between audio and LFO mode with this flick of this button. And I guess this would be in its kind of truest oscillator use. There is a volt per octave input here, so you can track it. And there's a variable waveform, which we have here, which also, if you go into LFO mode, you're just going to hear a load of clicks here, but you can see what's going on the MATTHS here. You can access those waveforms in the LFO mode. I'm just going to kind of let you keep listening to the output of this. So as I play around with these different functions, you'll hear more what's going on. And keep your eye on the MATTHS here for these different outputs. So as I mentioned earlier, we're playing with time, we're playing with frequency, we're playing with amplitude, and we've got a set of dials here at the top which deal with time. We've got 3 faders here which deal with amplitude, and then we've got these 3 here which deal with pitch, frequency, if you like. So we've got this main dial here in the middle, which is our kind of main offset, if you like, for all of the 3 frequency dials. And the reason there's 3 of them is because you can travel through, or you can set different frequencies for each one of these and travel through them. And you travel through them using the time dictated up here. So got 4 stages of time, and you can hear the changes of that based on the volume that you set with these. So time, volume, pitch, and you can go through them. Now if I just put this in cycle mode, what's happening here is we are hearing time happening here. So I've got no clock going in here, this is just it cycling around. So the time is being dictated by these dials up here. So if they're all around here, you get nothing. And as you introduce another one, you introduce different changes in time. The further it is around, the longer the time is of that particular stage. Let's bring in the 3rd one. Bring in the 4th one. Nice. And you can take a stage out. And now it's only going through those 2. Okay? Now the pitch of that is being determined by these 3 dials here. So if we just stay, just so we're hearing that one, we can change the pitch of that time there. We go to the second one, we've got pitch here, which will be offsetting that as well. And then third one also is for that. Fourth one is then for the last one. So if we get those cycling around again, now these aren't quantized, these pitches at the moment, unless you send into it, let me just grab a cable, unless you send into it a pitch. So let me take, actually yeah, I'll take the pitch from here, plug that into the volt per octave, and that's just playing a C. And now these will incrementally snap to semitones. If you remove that, they're completely free, completely sweepable. But when that's connected, it will track to that. So let's just leave that in for now. Okay, this is all very well. What about, so we've got time, we've got pitch there. Maybe I'll just change that so you can hear it a little bit better. Now we're not hearing any changes in volume, and that's when these come in. Now to do that, I'm going to take the output from the fourth output, which gives us basically the output we was hearing of the oscillator with the time, but we're now hearing this kind of envelope shape, this volume shape that it will follow. And again, if you follow here, you'll see on the green trace, if I turn those down, it goes flat. And if I turn up the first one, you kind of then just get that kind of sharp envelope look. So you're creating an envelope using this. You can get very, very short. See what I mean? If I bring up the last one and make that long, we're getting this complex envelope going on. Bring up the one in the middle. And of course, the longer I make each one of these stages, the more kind of complex that's going to be. You can change the tunings. You can also introduce glide. Oh, by the way it's cycling around, once this time gets back to 0, it will go back to the first one. The first one that will then start from 0 again. So I guess with this, yeah, you can create, you know, just like, if that wasn't cycling around and you're just triggering, which we can do. So if we change that from cycle to trigger, and let's put in some triggers here. 16th notes. Let's just change that, just so it's on the 1. You know. You can get kind of percussive things like that going on. Maybe I'll just put in a few more notes here as well. Remember, this offset main frequency here is for all of them. So there you go, you see, we can start coming up with some interesting grooves, playing with the time, playing with the frequency, playing with that glide, playing with the volume, bring in a kick drum for a bit of context. Now you'll notice that things are kind of in time as well. Everything's running off the same clock now, by the way. These triggers run off this clock. Now if I want this to be bang on in time, if I actually hold this button down and turn it up to cycle mode, this module is now going to do something really clever. It's going to hear the trigger input coming in there, and it's going to work out the time divisions of what it sees as a bar, if you like, and then it's going to divide this time that you're manually creating here to fit within that bar. And this is where I really enjoy playing with this. So it's no longer kind of just running on its own cycle, and it's now listening to this cycle input. And if I put more in here, it'll get quicker. So it's double the speed of that time now. It's worked that out. You see? Now we haven't really looked at the other outputs. We'll get to those very, very shortly. There is some fun that we can have here though, if we just put some modulation into this WCV, which is a bipolar, so it's a attenuverter. And if we just plug some modulation into that, it'll scan through these different waveforms. Like so. Like it. And if we want to change and play with these, we can. So if we want to make these longer or shorter, and it'll do some calculations as we change that timing to make sure that it fits with the timing of our track. It's really clever. So it's really cool to kind of like get something like this going and kind of just play with it a bit. Maybe add some delay. Down a little. Crazy delay. Just take that modulation out a little. And that's my dog barking in the background, sorry about that. Now this is one way of using the module. This is using it as an oscillator. And using the audio output, which you can do, but we don't have to just use it like that. We can actually use this timing and this envelope that it's generating, and we can send that out and use that anywhere else within our modular. So it becomes a real kind of centerpiece for other places. So these are the three outputs here. What we have on the first output is just this contour of this. So this shape comes out of the first output, and that's what you've seen on green. On the second output, you're then seeing a unipolar waveform. So it's 0 to 8 volts, I think, which is that unipolar, it is that contour being used, and it is basically sending out the waveform sort of sandwiched within from the bottom to the top of wherever those are. Then the third one is the same, but it's sandwiched from where the top of the fader is to the top of where the fader can travel to, so up here. So the second one's this, third one is this. The fourth one that we was listening to is actually the sound, but that is having that applied to it, I'm trying to explain this as clearly as possible. And the fifth and final one is literally just the sound coming out, but the contour isn't applied to it. Let's hear that more in context, because it is quite hard to explain this. It's such a clever module and it does so much. So as an example, here's my spectrophone, and let me send that into a VCA. And what we're going to do is we're going to open and close the VCA using the envelope from here. That sounds about right to me. Now, if we plug that into my output, let's plug that in. And let's take the first output here, which is now opening and closing the VCA, which the spectrophone's going through. Okay. If I bring in the Auza, probably going to be out of tune. It's not too bad. But you can hear it's using this contour on both the Auza at the minute and the Spectrophone's VCA simultaneously. Let's take the Auza out, so we're just listening to the VCA being open and closed here of the Spectrophone. And if we want to change that, move that out of the way so you can see on the MATTHS. And we get that going on. Now, if I was to take the next one along, we get a much more complicated output, which is open and closing that VCA now. And it's really kind of sandwiched the waveform. If I take the next one out, and now we're getting what's down here below. By the way, the glide and all that, it still applies, and there's timing of the stages. And that, you know, obviously I'm changing that, which is open and closing that VCA, but I'll bring back the actual oscillator. The same is being applied to that on that fourth output. And it's in time because we've got the trigger input going in there. So let's just stay with that a second. So we're just listening to the Spectrophone, and we're listening to these. This controlling the VCA, and you can see that here on the red of the MATTHS of actually what's going on there. So if you can imagine, you could apply that then to other areas. You could use all the other outputs and send them to other VCAs, or you could send them even to, you know, things like, let's take that output and let's plug it into some modulation. So you're getting all of this kind of extra outputs here, going out, modulating stuff. And again, if we bring back the oscillator output, they are out of tune now, because I changed the There we go. Then back in tune. So we're hearing that, hearing the spectrophone, and as we play around with these, it's going to affect both of them. So it's a great way to break down a track by obviously turning down the volume of some of those stages and then bringing it in. Cool. If you want to do something really interesting, so let's just listen to the Auza. Take off the delay. So we're sending regular clocks into that, which is creating a timing division for us. If I send quite a regular clock into it, we're now going to get additional, it's kind of computating irregular clock, if you like, going into there, and you're going to get different things happening. Let's put some more in. It's kind of just freaking it out now. And of course, don't forget that's going to affect the other outputs. So let's hear what that's doing on the spectrophone. Combine that. Crazy, crazy, crazy. It's going to sound wonky now with the kick drum because I'm sending irregular clocks into there. But let's make them a bit more regular and just make them quicker. Nice. And in fact, let's make it really long. So I'm just going to put one clock in at the start of each bar over how many is that? 32. Nice. And this is where I think it works really well, with a slow clock coming in. Now I wish there was a mode in this where you could like hold down a button and change these frequency dials and have them stay within a particular chord or particular scale. That'd be really cool because they're not quantized to any scale or anything. So if I do adjust these, there's a chance that they're not going to be as musically involved with each other as they are at the moment. So I don't know, maybe that's a future update they can do with that, but that would be really cool because then I could just jam it and know no matter what I turn those to, it's going to be in tune. Remember, no matter what I change these to, it's working out where the beat is and the tempo essentially to make those divisions work. It's wicked. Now there's something else you could do here. So instead of using the output here to open and close the VCA, where the spectrophone's going in, what I'm going to do is I can use these outputs here which gives me an end of cycle output at the end of each of these cycles, or one at the very end. So if I take the last one, plug that into the MATTHS here to trigger it, when it gets to the end of this one, it will fire an envelope. There. So if I take that envelope and use that, another cable to open and close the VCA that spectrophone's going in. There it is. Still got the modulation going in from this into the partials, that's what you're hearing. So that's triggering at the end of that. So bring that in. And it's going to trigger that kind of musically in time, because when it gets to 0, it knows when it's getting to 0, it's all in time. Bring the kick in. And we could even use one of these outputs here as well to modulate the waveform. I'll keep with using it from here. I'm going to take it from the third one. There's quite a lot going on. Nice. And again, let's take some modulation from maybe the second one here into the FM bus here. Cool. So you can see if you've got this really working on multiple things, VCAs and so on and so forth, and you start playing around with the time, it's going to interact with everything. So when you get the ender trigger for this, let's put some, maybe I should put some reverb on the spectrophone. Let's go into there. Cool. Let's turn the spectrophone off for a minute. The pitch changes that you're hearing is just coming from this sequence here. Maybe add some more in, just for a bit of variation. So for this, you know, let's just take out the kick and the delay. I'm not actually having to use a VCA for this because the volume of this contour is essentially, providing you're using this fourth output, is giving you that volume control as if it's like a VCA. And using the modulation now on the waveform, which is cool. As I mentioned, you can also take the ender signal out from each one of these. If we go into the trigger here, and you'll see that fire on these. So you could use that. You could maybe even use that to change the waveform here as well. Oops, wrong one. Let's take the output. So from these stages, we are getting an envelope to change the waveform there a little bit, which can be cool. Okay, here's another interesting way of using the end of cycle outputs here, and you can use that for creating really interesting kind of rhythms with hi-hats or any kind of percussion. So I've got the same setup here. The time is essentially being divided based on this input here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the end of cycle out of the different time at the end of each one of those, and I'm going to plug it into hi-hat here, and it's triggering now depending on those. Just and you get these kind of wonky hi-hat stuff going on, and of course depending on what the time is, you get different kind of rhythms. Just turn down the oscillator. Just got the kick drum playing just so you can hear where the one is. So yeah, you can get interesting stuff going on. Obviously if they're right down, you're not going to get anything out of the others, and then you can just get stuff like that going on, and just play with the one time dial there. And because it's looking at this and it's doing that calculation for you, it keeps it kind of all kind of sympathetic to the time that you've got going on. Now obviously that's going to change the oscillator output. Because we haven't got the other time, if I bring those in, it's going to affect everything. So another good example of how the time is working with across the whole of this module. Now, obviously those cycles are not being affected by the volume, but this affects the volume of the oscillator output. So you can jam with that. Yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting to show that. Just coming up with crazy hi-hat patterns. Is that on? Is it a bit wonky? Is it a bit swung? I think it is. Bring the volume of that last one in. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, just thought I'd show you that. Okay, just to give you an example of just how expressive the kind of frequency manipulation is and how the time works, I've just taken out the kind of timing into the gate there, so it's just in free cycle running mode. And all these are down, so we're just hearing this first one. So it's just staying on this one. and you'll hear it. So turn it around, you start getting a softer attack. You can see that here on the MATTHS. So you can do really long sweeps with these, and let's bring in a second time. Actually, let's go straight to the fourth one, so we can do a really big glide between the two and make that one lower in pitch. Goes very long. So you can get those kind of things going on. If that's all the way there, you're going to get more of an attack. And you back to your kind of kick drums if you want. Now, if we was to take a clock, give it a kind of clock input there, and go back into that mode, that's going to be in time with our music. So you got like a second kick drum now. You can just do big kind of weird pitch dives with it. Nice. Let's hit that trigger output for the hi-hats. Yeah, you got something going on there. Remember, this works as an offset for both those as well. Go the other way. Playing around with the volume. So this one's very low frequency. So we're only hearing that, and we're bringing that different frequency there, and a big glide. Yeah. Now, we've also got this input here as well that we can use, the DCV, and this adds or subtracts from the contour as well. So depending what you send into it, it's going to essentially turn up and down wherever it is at that point. It's going to turn that up and down for you and give you kind of new contours. So yeah, let's take MATTHS here and just get it cycling. And this isn't clocked to anything, so we can hit. I just want you to be able to hear that. So if it was, In fact, if it was, we could kind of use it as a way of sidechain ducking in a way. So instead of cycling it, let's yeah, we'll leave that there. Let's send it a sequencer that's clocked. So I'll just use steppy here. And if I just put that on every one, now that's adding and subtracting. That's adding at the minute. If I subtract, and we're kind of getting a ducking kind of effect in a way, which could be useful, bringing the kick. Oops. Take delay off. Yeah, maybe you don't want it that much, or you want to go positive with it. Kind of cool. Now we've got them completely down. We're doing adding. Now I'm using this kind of like as a short envelope to give us that going on. So you can have a combination of something like that and then start adding. Turn the glide down. See, I knocked that and it made it a bit musically challenging, if you like. But if it was quantized, that'd be really cool because you wouldn't have to worry about that. Now, up until now, we've just been in cycle mode really, but I will say that there is, let's just turn that down, there are some other ways of doing this as well. If you don't want to do it in the mode that I'm using in, which I usually do because it keeps all the time divisions in time with your music, but if you don't want to do that, I showed you at the beginning, you could just turn on cycle and it'll just cycle round based on whatever time you've got here. If you go into trigger mode, of course, as soon as it gets a trigger, it will run through that and it'll stop until it gets another trigger. If you send it loads of triggers or quite quick triggers, you're going to get it cycling around the first couple because if the time's quite long. But if you do that, let's turn that up. So it's wait for a trigger each time. Now, in gate mode, if you don't have anything plugged into it, it just stays on the sustained portion. So you're just going to hear that. And it'll just keep playing, which is quite useful. So you can just send it a sequence in and it's basically playing that frequency there. So you could change that frequency if you wanted to. But there's also, in gate mode, if you plug something in and this is a trigger, but if it was a gate, it would get to the sustained portion and it would stay on that as long as the gate's held down. Once the gate's let up, it'll then progress. So you got different ways of triggering it, and the way that I was using it was holding down this function, going up to cycle, and I believe this is called cycling ping mode. And yeah, it's definitely the mode that I like to use it most with. Yeah. Now, of course, if you play around with this, you can get all sorts of interesting stuff going on, like ratcheting. That's quite easy to do with this. You know, you don't have to use the sound output of this at all. You could just use literally all the different kind of waveform outputs and send that to different places. But what's killer is just that you've got this ability to just kind of on the fly play around with the volume, play around with the frequency, play around the time. and it's all synchronized to a clock, essentially. The only thing that isn't is the frequency, as I've mentioned. But it is a lovely sounding, rich oscillator as well. I've got a bit of delay on there, I know. Yeah, so that is the Wave Packets by Auza. And I apologise for how long this video has taken me to do, but every time I plug it in and get something going, I don't want to lose it. I've used this live. It's fantastic for that. Once you've got it all synchronized like this and you just start playing with stuff here. And playing with the time, you can get some really interesting stuff coming out of it. Now we've been listening to the audio. Now everything that we've done where we've been listening to audio, if we go into LFO mode, I'll turn the volume down, but now we've got exactly the same functionality, but we're in LFO. So this is going to be, obviously it's a different frequency range from audio. So you can use the output in the same way, all the outputs in the same way, except as an LFO, a low frequency oscillator. So you're not going to hear it. So yeah, you don't have to use the sound output at all. You could literally just use this essentially as a bunch of LFOs that are working together in the same way. So I should mention that these are now LFO speeds, whereas when you're in the audio selection, these are the frequency of the oscillator. I guess it's the same thing. It's the frequency of the LFO, isn't it? So time, volume, frequency, outputs, loads of fun with this. You know, just think about all the different ways that you can utilize this. I'm probably underutilizing it myself in many ways, and there's probably a lot more that I can get out of this. But well done to these guys. Go check them out at Auza. This is their Wave Packets. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Most appreciated. Thanks. Bye for now.